Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing good. Today we're going to continue on working on our shed project. We left off the other day. We had installed our rafters. Now we're going to install our roof plywood and start to get everything prepared for installing shingles. So throw on your safety glasses. Whoa. And let's get started. Make sure your boots are tied too. All right, so before we put our roof sheathing on, what we need to do first is install what we call collar ties. Collar ties are just going to be a piece of wood that's going to go across our roof span and connect both rafters. We're just going to use some scrap strapping since this is a small roof. Bigger roofs you want to get into using, 2x6s, 2x8s, etc. The way I found the location for our collar ties was, the theory is you want to have your collar ties a third of the way down from the ridge. So from the top, I leveled across from the top of our top plate to the bottom of our ridge is 7 inches. So we want to come 1/3 of the way down. From the top of our top plate to the bottom of the ridge is 21 inches. So we want to divide that into thirds and come 1/3 of the way down. So that's going to make us come 7 inches down from our ridge. So I'm going to measure 7 inches. I'm going to just take my level because we want this to look nice and level. And there we go. There we go. Now I'm going to hold that there and mark it. All right, perfect. So next, I'm going to take my square. I'm just going to carry those lines right under. And then I already marked the opposite side, and this is just going to save us from having to mark and level every rafter. So I'm going to snap my lines real quick. Then we're going to get started. Perfect. We're going to reel that up. I'm just going to grab my nail gun. Alright, so now we're going to take our piece. I've already pre-cut them. And I'm going to hold them right up here. And just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 nails should be good to keep it from pulling apart. This is going to help our roof from dropping. It's gonna, if we were to not do this, our roof might start to sag over time. So it's gonna pull both sides of the roof together and it's gonna keep them from flexing down. Cool? Awesome. We're gonna keep going now. On each one, we're just gonna put these above our line. Good. All right, so we're ready to install our roof plywood. So what I just did was I went back and I just snapped the line a 1/4 inch up off the ends of our rafter tails. This is going to just give us any, once we snap our straight line, if there's any variation in the rafter ends, we just don't want the plywood sticking out. So we go in a little, because once we wrap everything in our trim and our drip edge, that'll all get covered up. So also in that line I snapped, I went back through, and I just put a couple, as you can see, nails right in the roof ends of the roof rafters. When I go to put my plywood up, especially where it's just me, it makes it easier. I have those nails, so when I put my plywood on the roof, it's gonna slide, or I can slide the plywood back down, and those nails will help me hold it. It'll just be an extra set of hands for me in the moment. Sound good? All right, let's get a piece of plywood up. All right, so real quick, I just want to show you a perfect example why we lay our framing out 16 inches on center. It's so when you can see our sheet lays perfectly right down the center of our rafter, and our next piece will break right on that as well and save us from cutting every sheet of plywood to make it fit to the joist. Okay, so one more thing. I just want to show you, we got to finish up our last 2 pieces of sheathing in a minute. We are going to just take some measurements, cut those. But before we get down, I just wanted to show you, before I put these sheets of plywood up, I marked them out 16 inches on center. This way I knew exactly where the studs were, so I wasn't missing the rafters when nailing. So I didn't want to put a nail there and not have it go into anything. So as you become more experienced, you might not have to do this. In this case, where we're just starting out, I figured it's a great way to help you guys become accurate when nailing sheathing. So we installed our roof plywood, and I finished siding our gable end. We're ready to install our roof trim. The boards that I tacked one board up there, that is called our rake board. What our rake board does is trim off the gable ends of our roof. So what I did was, as you can see, I laid it up there and I just traced the back side of it. You can do it 2 ways. You can equally bisect the angles, and however, I'm kind of weaving the angles on it rather than just dividing the 2 angles straight down the middle. All right, so now I'm going to take this. I'm just matching our other side on the other end of the shed that's already built. So I'm just going to take this, and about every 16 inches, I'm going to put 2 nails. As I go, I can move my piece up and down to make it flush with that roof. 1, 2. 1, 2. And 1, 2. And then after, I can go back, and as you can see, I made our rake board ends long. After I install my fascia boards, which goes over the face of our rafters, I'll trim that back with a handsaw. All right, so we didn't have enough to cut our soffit piece in one shot, so I just measured the remaining piece at 22.5. So we're gonna cut that, then throw it in. So in this case, we're gonna nail into every rafter end, and we're gonna put 2 nails into every rafter when we nail it. There, and there. And I'm actually just gonna Put one nail right at the end of that, make that nice and tight. Now we're going to cut our fascia board, which is made up of 1x4 pine. It's pre-primed, as is all this material. And that's 1/18 and 1/4. Perfect. Now, as I go, what I'm going to do is grab my nail gun. I'm going to measure up from the bottom of the soffit over here, from the bottom of the soffit to the bottom edge of our 1x4, and that's 1 3/4 inches. So I'm going to tack it on the end here for now. Right in there. Now as we go, I'm just going to measure 1 3/4 inches. So I'll do one right here and nail it. So we just want that to line up. So same thing, we're going to come down here as I trip. 1 3/4 inches and put it in. Same thing, I'm doing 2 nails for every one. Perfect. All right, so now it looks almost like it was always there. So now, you guys are probably wondering, what are we gonna do over here? So, in that situation, what we're going to install, all right, so now we're going to install what we call a pork chop. No, not what you might be eating for dinner this week. A pork chop is a piece that is going to finish off the end of our rake board. Where our rake board ties into our soffit and our fascia, it'll cover the ends of that. So what I did was, I went over, I tacked this piece on, and then I drew a level line down. I set that level line up to die in, it's going to die in with the edge of our corner board, and then I leveled that line across, and that's going to trim off the end of our soffit. So again, we plumbed this line. I might have said level, but I'm not sure. So we plumbed this line down so it was in line with our corner board that we're going to put on, and then leveled the piece across for our soffit. Now I'm just going to go cut it on the miter saw. We're left with that little piece right there, and I'll be right back. All right, so we're left with this little triangle. We're going to come up, nail it on right where I had marked it. I'm going to put my hand over here to keep it away from the end of the nail gun. And perfect. All right, so now I can take my 2-foot level. I have it over here. We're gonna level up from the ends of our pork chop. And then I'm gonna cut that with my hands. If I did have a small cordless circular saw in hand, I could use that. In this case, I don't want to use the circular saw. It's heavy and has a cord, so it can bog me down. So I'm going to use our trusty hand saw. I'm just gonna line it up. Remember, always have your safety glasses on for hand tools or power tools. And we're gonna cut that right off. So as we do this, I try and pick up my scrap as we go, just so I'm not tripping on it. All right, so we notched our piece for our fork chop. We're ready to install it. So first, what I'm gonna do is nail my top. I'm gonna make it sure it's nice and flush. I'm gonna put one nail right into the edge. Now, we would, if we're in the shop, would we use our combination square? I don't have it in my tool belt right now, so I'm just gonna mark it for 3/8. I'm just gonna drag my finger right down it, and that's gonna allow me to know where to shoot right into the middle of our piece with my nail gun. Now I'm gonna nail that. Again, about every 16 I like to do. There. Yeah. Remember, I'm using a nail gun because it's making it easier for me where I'm just working by myself, but don't ever use any of these tools unless you're properly trained on how to use them. All right, so how's that corner board look? Good? Perfect. So I ran out of material to do the last corner board. So we're gonna get started tomorrow on installing roof shingles. Have a great day.